There was a lot of discussion as to what the pilot for the highly anticipated and controversial follow-up series to Star Trek would be. The decision eventually settled on having a single episode that would introduce the audience to the crew to each other, and have an exciting sci-fi mystery that would give an idea of what the show would look like going forward. Then, in production terms right before the premiere, Paramount decided that they wanted a two-parter spectacle. Veteran writer DC Fontana had already written the inaugural script, and they didn't have the time or inclination to start from scratch with something new. Series creator Gene Roddenberry took it upon himself to write an additional story and scenes. This is a kind of extended framing device, a trial held to test humanity's behaviour by a menacing but sprightly thing called Q. These additional scenes mostly tack onto the beginning and the end of Fontana's existing script. The whole episode is bizarre. It was probably going to be anyway, but the fact that it's like two episodes collided together doesn't help. Or does, if you like weirdness. So what stands out? What makes Encounter at Farpoint a uniquely strange installment of not just Next Gen, but all of Star Trek? Number 1. Starfleet are thugs. This is the first and most obvious thing that stands out about Encounter at Farpoint, and it really seems like Q's got a good point when he puts us on trial. Nobody acts with the kind of dignity, professionalism, or honesty that we've come to expect from Starfleet's finest. Right from the off, the very first conversation our heroes have is about how they're relishing spying on some erstwhile allies. See, the Federation is negotiating right of use for a brand new station, the eponymous Farpoint. It seems like the perfect facility and the perfect location, and this has got some folks, our crew included, wondering if it's all a bit too good to be true. So the plan is to negotiate in bad faith and look for opportunities to go behind the administrator's back to get the real skinny on the sitch. Data asks for clarification on what they're doing.
To spy.
There's no ambiguity here, they are spying, but nobody objects. When they do get to the station, every engagement with the administrator, Groppler Zorn, is kind of tense and judgy. Now sure enough, there is some really nefarious stuff going on, but our crew don't know that yet. Still, they alternatively blank, strong-arm and implicitly threaten the guy that they're having a discussion with. The situation ramps up when an unidentified ship attacks the planet. Zorn starts begging for help as the civilians in the main city start getting murked. This desperate plea is met with the response. Then our heroes do take action, just not to stop the planet-wide death and destruction. Instead, Picard asks, that's right, they won't help as the city is bombed, but they will forcibly abduct the leader at that time, or leave him to die. In any case, the crew of the Enterprise, who are ostensibly there to hammer out some terms of negotiation, act more like a bunch of goons running a shakedown than a team of peaceable explorers. And it's not just everyone else that they're belligerent to outside of the ship, oh no. Number 2, everyone's a dick to everyone else on the ship. As soon as Q appears, it's like everyone falls apart and the snapping and chastising begins. See, it's not just the morality or lack thereof that makes everyone seem so bizarre on Farpoint. It's the petulant, snippy, and willfully abrasive interplay that really everyone displays at some point. This is not exactly a nurturing or collaborative environment. Make a slip up or offer an unwelcome opinion, and you're getting slapped down, son. Okay, it would take too long to list every example, but just take it as read that the crew alternately verbally slap each other down.
Worf is right, sir. Security chief, I can't just stand here and let...
Yes, you can, Lieutenant Yar.
Undermine each other.
And our only choice is to fight.
Fight or try to escape?
Ignore and belittle each other.
Useful how, Commander?
Investigating some things that I've noticed since I've been here. The last was a piece of
Gold
fruit.
would be lovely with this.
Chastise each other. Act with cold contempt. Berate with sarcasm.
Do you intend to blast a hole in the viewer?
Hell, even Data's dropping bombs.
Prejudice is very human.
Maybe you shouldn't say that when we're literally on trial for being prejudiced. There's definitely points in the episode where you'd be able to say that Q's right and humanity kind of seems a bit petty, hypocritical, and even indifferent to suffering. But that's not all we got up our sleeves, oh no, we're capable of making some really dumb decisions as well. Let's go back to the start of the episode for a bit. A being with apparently godlike powers appears out of nowhere and says humanity is being judged. Q shows his powers, says he's deciding if humanity actually lives by the principles of humanity, and then Tinkerbell's away. Nobody really knows what they're up against, but Picard's got a plan, and it sucks. He figures that if the departments only communicate with printouts, very sneaky, and they just make a break for it, then we'll be able to leave this being in the space dust. Yeah, apparently every station has a printer. Who knew? There's a clear and present danger. It's time to take action. The pace of the episode ramps up as we inform all of the stations of the plan. Redeploy to the battle bridge. Evacuate the entire saucer section. Nobody panic. Okay, you can panic a bit. Then we have to detach the saucer. Oh my god. All of this takes so long. Sure, they never seem to really care or know how to shoot TV show action back in the 90s, but wow. These are supposed to be the action scenes. It's not like we could expect a battle between the Enterprise and the Q entity because...
Are you recommending that we fight a life form that can do all those things?
Well, actually, yeah. Makes a lot more sense than not fighting it. Yeah, this is bad decision making part 2. Looking at it objectively, this thing preemptively attacked the crew and made outrageous, unprovoked threats. You have no reason to believe that this thing is merciful or reasonable. Meanwhile, Picard's gambled on being able to successfully drag race that thing, and the notion of fooling it with a saucer separation and using post-it notes for internal comms. They intended to blind it with photon torpedoes, and all of this stuff does actually kind of seem to have worked. You're doing a pretty good job of keeping them off balance at this point, and you already have shot at them, so going toe-to-toe is actually reasonably worth a crack. Come on, Cisco would be charging phasers, loading torpedoes, and pulling on the gloves in wait for that mother cure. Just saying. Come on, Enterprise crew, you may as well give it a go.
We surrender.
Okay, whatever. Q whisks our heroes off to a janky post-apocalyptic courtroom for a sham trial to convict humanity of not being humane enough. This whole thing is bizarre. Sure, it's a willful sham of a trial, but even still, it's the most bizarre back and forth of judiciary nonsense that's ever been committed to screen. Let's try and take this step by step. So, Q accuses our crew of being representative of a race that is willfully bloodthirsty, quick to anger and judge. So everyone had better be cool, collected. Oh great, someone from the crew has already beaten the shit out of somebody for no reason. None of this seems to constitute evidence of bloodthirstiness or anything, though. It's not like your crew members just beat a guy up for pretty much no reason. There you go, you're guilty. Instead, Q one-ups it and has the guy killed for getting beaten up in the first place. I wonder if Tasha Yar is spoiling for another round with another court representative.
Your soul is mine.
Then we get this kind of thing.
The prisoners will not be harmed.
It's not like any of this is a bad scene, it's actually pretty tense and interesting. It's just, there's no consistent legalese on display, and God knows what the standards and arguments are.
Legal trickery is not permitted.
Or why anything that's said at any point is considered convincing or binding.
This honorable court is adjourned.
One question before you go though, Your Honor. Why are you putting us on trial? Who the hell is Q comparing us to? In Trek, humans have to constantly justify their existence and standards to these random godlike beings.
Normally I would have destroyed all of you.
But if you compare humanity to a lot of the races out there, we're actually quite peaceable, cooperative, and diplomatic. Some races are just outright evil. Q, why don't you go and judge the Dominion?
They are dead. You're dead. Cardassia is dead.
Or how about this guy?
I didn't kill just one Husnok, or 100 or 1,000. I killed them all.
Go and put the Klingons on trial for bloodthirstiness, that's their whole thing. But no other race seems to ever have to put up with this kind of stuff. To be fair, it's a good job that Q isn't judging everyone for being clueless, because no one has the faintest idea what they're doing. The prize here goes to the new XO, Commander William Riker. He doesn't know the ship's layout,
Could you help me find Commander Data? I understand he's somewhere on this deck.
basic functions,
And as you can see, sir, it's pointing you that way.
crew roster.
Commander Riker, this is our ship's counselor, Deanna Troy.
He doesn't even know what a holodeck is.
I hope I show some promise.
But we can't just blame just him. Worf doesn't seem to know that a phaser can shoot through the view screen.
Do you intend to blast a hole in the viewer?
The captain doesn't really know how saucer separation works,
Record search data. Results of detaching saucer section at high warp velocity.
Inadvisable.
or even who his chief medical officer is. Even the resident empath, Troy, can't tell that Riker's just not that into you. We're kind of supposed to be getting introduced to this new world and learning through the characters. It's just nobody seems to know anything about anything or anyone. Watch Encounter at Farpoint, then Chain of Command, where no-nonsense Captain Jellicoe seems annoyed at everyone's apparent incompetence,
I don't like it.
and I defy you not to agree that he makes a valid point. Someone who doesn't make a very valid point is Q. As the episode progresses, we uncover the mystery of Farpoint and we get to the tipping point of judgment for Q. As a mysterious ship rains fire on the helpless population that's already suffered casualties on a global scale, Picard prepares to step in. And this is the problem, apparently? To clarify, this is the point that takes the cake for Q. Picard considering acting in self-defense of the planet's population. You'd have thought standing by in the first place as they were massacred would be more egregious. You'd have thought this would be a pretty blatant example of them choosing to ignore their own ethical standards. But the big question would be, why aren't the Bandai being judged? They captured this creature and knowingly imprisoned it and tortured it. Or this thing. It's literally committing genocide against an entire planet. Whatever we're doing seems to pale in comparison. Why do the hippie bureaucrat and Big Jello here get off the hook? It's always us. Do you know what the real injustice here is, though? Encounter at Farpoint is good, and it gets slammed as languid and functioning as a poor introduction to the show. Now, those are valid points, but it is so interesting. There is a lot to unironically enjoy. The shots of the Enterprise and the general effects work is surprisingly good even now, despite a few ropey miniature shots. The interpretation of the warp effect is great. Patrick Stewart gets some amazing moments, like here. He has to maintain his professional demeanor, express surprise, joy, trepidation, and it is a flawlessly performed moment. Data's interesting, Q is essential as he adds some wildcard energy and malicious fun to proceedings. Seriously, if Encounter at Farpoint had just been the Farpoint story as intended, it would have sucked. The zaniness and unpredictability of the Q stuff just lifts everything else in a way no one could have expected. A lot of what's here becomes unrecognizable when the show ultimately finds its feet, but Encounter at Farpoint remains, to this day, fascinating.